All right, good afternoon. We're on lesson 15, making a multiplication table. Let's go to our objectives. Sorry, no joke today. Basically, our objective is to use a multiplication table to find the product of two numbers. We're also going to identify and use the commutative property of multiplication, the zero property of multiplication, and the identity property of multiplication. Then at the end of this lesson, we're going to construct a multiplication table. So your math vocabulary for this week is factors. Basically, factors are numbers that are multiplied together, and when they are multiplied together, they form what is called a product, right, or the answer to a multiplication problem. The commutative property is when you interchange the numbers in an equation. For example, 5 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 5, or 5 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 5, right? Basically, they equal the same thing whether you change the numbers around or not. The identity property is when you multiply something by 1 and you get the same number. 5 times 1 equals 5, or 3 times 1 equals 3. All right. So your new concept is below we have a list of several sequences of numbers. Together, these sequences form an important pattern. This pattern is sometimes called a multiplication table. A multiplication table usually lists the first 10 or more multiples of the first 10 or more whole numbers. On a multiplication table, we can find an answer to such as how much is 3/4. We do this by using rows and columns, okay? For example, we go to the third row. So because how much is 3/4, right? So we go to the third row, then we go to the fourth column, and then wherever they meet is your answer. And so we find that 3/4 is 12. Wait, hold on. Let me go back to this really quick. If we wanted to do the commutative property, and we could see on this table as well, if we wanted to do 4 3s and flip it around, if you go to 4 and go to the third column, you'll find the number 12 there as well. Okay, so these numbers on the top and on the side, those are going to be your factors. 3 times 4 are your factors and equal the product of 12. All right, same thing if you do 4 times 3. 4 times 3, which are your factors, equals a product of 12. Let me see if I could, our next one. All right, and so this is your multiplication table. And what you're going to want to do is, at the end of this lesson, take your worksheet out, and I want you to fill out your multiplication times table. As you can see, if you multiply anything by 1, you will get the same exact number. So here's the ones row. 1 times, say, 3 is 3. That's called the identity property of multiplication. What's not listed on this multiplication table is the zeros. And so anything times 0 equals 0. Let me go back to the other slide. Anything times 0 will ultimately equal 0. If there's a numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on top, anything times the 0 ends up also being 0. All right. So that's it for today. There's let me go to our lesson practice, but there is no examples I'm going to show you. Just make sure you make this multiplication table. If you need to pause it and do this multiplication table right now, go ahead and do that. And this will just help you later on if you have trouble with multiplication, especially up to your 12s. All right, you should know all 12 times 12. You should know all your multiplication table for the rest of your life. Actually, it's really a good skill to have and know all your up to your 12s. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our lesson practice. For your lesson practice, you're going to use your multiplication table to figure out what the products are. So just go on your fifth row, find the fourth column, and then you'll find out what your answer is to 4 times 5. All right, and do the same for A through D. And then it's basically use your multiplication table and you can find each product. It's pretty simple. The only ones that you might have trouble on are I and J. But remember, for I, you're going to use the zero property of multiplication. And then for J, you're going to be using the identity property. And then for K, it says the answer to a multiplication problem is called a product. What do we call the numbers that are multiplied together? I covered that, remember. Make sure if you need to go back and figure out what that is, it's one of your definitions. And that's the answer to letter K. All right, guys, if you have any questions, make sure you write them down on the back. Remember to do your 3 takeaways. What have you learned from this? I know probably not much, but I'm sure you could put some definitions down like the identity property. All right, so have a nice night. I'll see you tomorrow.